Welcome to the Darkstream, Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and unauthorized.tv. Welcome to all the reprehensibles. Welcome to the bears. Today we're back to the open chat. Just to be clear, open chat is going to be normal here, but we're going to do members only chat at least once a week. So nothing strange, nothing crazy, just there are certain topics that I will choose to focus on the members only chat. And of course, the book review stuff for the book review members is going to be private in terms of when it takes place, but we'll go ahead and make it public afterwards in case people want to watch it. So people were asking, what on earth are we talking about with regards to Unforgettable and remembering the forgotten veterans? And I'm sitting in the chair of a Korean War veteran. My grandfather was a U.S. Marine. He fought in World War II, and he fought on the Korean Peninsula. And it was interesting because he never talked very much about his experience in the Marine Corps. He did explain to me, why he enlisted and all that sort of thing. But when we did talk about it, he talked a little bit about Guadalcanal and a little bit about Tarawa. And I believe it was on Saipan that he got wounded, if I recall correctly. But the only thing he ever said about Korea was that it was really cold. And I was kind of impressed that he would have said that, because keep in mind, I grew up in Minnesota, and they would always come out and spend Christmas with us there. So he knew what cold was. He was originally from Southern California, but this was a man who did understand what cold meant. And so I was always kind of vaguely impressed, because I never really thought about cold weather in Asia. You tend to think about the hot, steamy, tropical jungles and so forth. So that was an interesting thing. The other thing that was kind of funny was that when I had graduated from college, I was dating a Korean girl. But then clearly it wasn't offensive, because she would always a platform for worthwhile stuff. And we're not just trying to create our own content. The focus of our own content, we're going to talk about that. We're going to push that. And in fact, I'm very pleased to be able to say that we are actually filming our first unauthorized documentary tonight. It's literally being filmed right now. Needless to say, I'm not in it. I'm not involved other than being the executive producer. But I'm very much looking forward to being able to introduce our first original documentary to you. But in the meantime, we have been contacted by a number of filmmakers, a number of producers and so forth, who have expressed some interest in being able to utilize Unauthorized as a platform. And in fact, we actually have been almost inundated by that, to the extent that we haven't even been able to seriously look at or review most of the stuff that people have offered us. So we first introduced Reclaiming the Blade, which is very, very well received. And now I'm pleased to say that today we made available Unforgettable, the Korean War, which is a documentary made by the grandson of a Korean War veteran. And I felt a little bit envious watching it, because I wish I had done something like that with my grandfather. I wish that I had made a more serious effort to get him to talk, to learn what more about what he experienced and what happened, and what he had learned from that, and what effect those experiences had had on his life. And I deeply regret, as a writer, and now years later as a whatever you want to call it, executive producer, filmmaker, whatever, I deeply regret not having done that. But this guy did, and I'm glad he did. And so I'm going to show you here a couple clips from Unforgettable. It's already up on Unauthorized. It's in the documentary section. You can access it with the link that's under this video. It's free to all unauthorized subscribers. If you just want to get, if you want to buy it, you can buy it. If you want to just be able to watch it, but you're not a subscriber, you can do so, I think, for $2.99 or something. Anyhow, without further ado, let's take a look at it.
Was broken, and we'd either try and fix it or we'd have to run a new one from that point on. Then coming back after we did that, no, he said, me go first. Well, I should have never let him go first. But he got killed by our own guys. Another thing is the forward observers went by telephone. He had to string wires for them because we did not have radios like today, cell phones or nothing. Pretty quick it got so that you didn't know where the front lines were. You didn't know who was your enemy and who was your friend. We had a Filipino, and his name is Valera, and he was a lineman. He would take care of the wires and stuff. We'd find out where the wire was broken, and we'd either try and fix it or we'd have to run a new one from that point on. Then coming back after we did that, no, he said, me go first. Well, I should have never let him go first. But he got killed by our own guys. He says, me GI. Well, boy, when he said me GI, they just pumped him full. You can't, So, yeah, he didn't appreciate him. Get you back together and stop. Of course, it was so cold and I didn't bleed much because it was, your clothes just kind of froze to you.
The weather in Korea in the winter of 1950 was some of the worst ever faced in military history, and would be worse than any subsequent months the rest of the war. Temperatures got as low as 40 degrees below zero in some parts of the country due to the wind coming from Siberia and the mountains. The conditions were unbearable for our infantry and fighting men. The United States military issued coats, jackets, and uniforms, and they were far better than anything the Chinese or North Koreans had. But keeping from getting frostbitten was a reality for all the troops. In addition to frostbite, soldiers had to worry about their rations being frozen, weapons jamming, and the frozen terrain. Keeping warm was also tough because of the dangers of lighting fires behind enemy lines for fears of being spotted. Grandpa remembered the conditions and what he had to deal with to sleep in those cold months.
At one time, I had a sleeping bag, but then through all the different things that took place, we ended up without any. The only thing we had was one wool blanket. So sometimes you kind of dig a little bit down in the snow and put your blanket in there and then cover up the other half to cover you up. But it was warmer in the snow than it was on top.
My dearest.
So sorry about the technical difficulties there, but there we go. So it's powerful stuff. It's extremely educational, and we're very pleased to be able to introduce it to you. Again, this is not, just to make it clear, this is not something that we produced ourselves, but so if you'd like to help support the filmmakers, please consider doing the rental or purchasing a copy of it. But if you're a subscriber, it's there for you to watch. And this is something that we're going to keep doing. Our goal initially is to introduce a new documentary every month, and we want to do high quality stuff. We want to do meaningful stuff, and we want to produce what Big Bear would call logos stuff. And so I'm glad that you guys found it interesting, and it is a reminder of how terrible war can be. It's not something that should be eagerly anticipated. It's not something that we should cheer for or get excited about. It might be something that we have to do as a very last resort. It is better than some of the alternatives, but it's not a good thing. When we talk about the four horsemen, they are bad. Plague, starvation, war, death. These are terrible things. And so, and we're going to, if you guys keep supporting us, if you guys keep, signing up for subscriptions, most of the subscriptions that we have are month to month. So we have to keep your interest. We have to re-win your interest every month. And we know that. Big Bear and I are just the foundation. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more coming. We're planning to do a lot more things. We could, in the long run, ultimately replace the History Channel because, they've become the Sharks and Nazis channel. Sharks, Nazis, and Holocaust. That's not going to happen with Unauthorized. If you've watched the Medieval History 101 with Professor Rachel Fulton Brown, you can see that we are producing stuff already after only 4 months. We're already producing stuff that goes much deeper than anything that you'll see on television today. And so I would encourage you, I would seriously encourage you, if you haven't subscribed to Unauthorized yet, to do so, because that's what's going to make it possible for us to do more and more of this stuff. I'd like to get to the point where we're actually producing documentaries like these. And so, because we're going to, I mean, think about it. We could do a documentary based on The Irrational Atheist. We could do a documentary based on the return of the Great Depression. We've got all kinds of ideas. We've got great source material. We've got great authors. What I'd like to do actually is I would like to create a series based on There Will Be War, which would combine fiction and nonfiction in the same way that the series created by Jerry Pournelle did. To do a video There Will Be War series to pair with the 10 books in the series. 19 says he'd like to see a philosophy channel. That's entirely possible. That's entirely possible. But, we're going to need more subscribers to do that. This is not a desperate sort of pitch, but because things are going great. We're very, very appreciative at the strong level of support. We've got nearly 5,000 subscribers already. That's huge. But in order to be regularly producing original documentaries and stuff, we probably need to get to around 15,000 would be my guess. Now, we've gotten to 5,000 in only 4 months. So this is definitely possible. I mean, if you just look at the number of subscribers that Big Bear and I have, if you put us together, now obviously there's a lot of overlap, but it's not complete overlap. There's 260 plus, so there's nearly 300,000 subscribers between Big Bear and I. Imagine if all of those subscribers were to subscribe to Unauthorized. That would shake the entire industry. And so, and that we will make the most of it. Like I said, we're already making an original documentary. We're filming it tonight, and we're doing it very, very inexpensively. We're doing it very frugally, and it's going to be excellent. It's going to be very, very professional. It's going to be very cool. And frankly, it's going to be a subject that I think is going to surprise a lot of people. It's going to be of interest to a lot of people outside of our usual focus. This is something that's a little bit more mainstream than you would probably anticipate that we would do. But it just happened to be something that a situation where all the stars aligned, all the people were going to be in the right place, and so we just said, let's do it. And so we actually decided to do it before we knew what anything was going to cost. We just said, this opportunity is unique. Let's jump in and do it. And I think people are going to be pretty stoked about it. Jay Dyer would be one possibility. Another possibility would be that English guy. I'm spacing on his name. He does the Aquinas stuff. That might be a bit excessively esoteric side, but we'll see. It depends on what people will support. And also we have a slight problem right now with, right now it's not possible for people to have more than one subscription. And so people have to make a choice. Am I going to support Big Bear? Am I going to support this, that, the other thing? And so that's why there's no, there's no subscription for me. There's no subscription for Professor Brown. And so, we'll just have to see how it goes. This is all an experiment. This is all something that we're figuring it out as we go along. And so, I'm actually a little bit shocked that it's extremely busy. Obviously, it's not going so well for them. So we'll see how that goes. Now, let's talk about, we've been talking about war a little bit. So as long as we're here, let's talk about the current situation in the Gulf. Not 10 minutes before I started the stream, I saw that the news had broken that Iran had seized a second British tanker. And now, obviously, this is a tit for tat. Britain started it. They seized an Iranian super tanker last week. Iran has now responded and taken back the tankers. I personally, here's my theory, and this is just my theory. The neoclowns were trying to get the United States to get involved in a military attack on Iran. That's very clear. I think that Trump played Bolton, and I think Trump basically got them to expose themselves and show their hand, and then promptly turned around and refused to launch the war. So it's very clear that the deep state actually has more influence in the UK at the moment than it does in the United States right now. Theresa May is known to be a swamp creature, and and I don't know about Boris Johnson. He may or may not be, but they couldn't get the U.S. to go to war with Iran. So and now with the Epstein arrests, and the Epstein arrests penetrate into the deep state in the UK, in the US, and in Israel. And so they don't have much time. It's very, very clear that something is coming. Remember all those tens of thousands of unsealed or of sealed indictments? One of the things that Neon Revolt pointed out that was really interesting was that R. Kelly and his arrest was the result of a indictment being unsealed. And so there's obviously a lot of something going on with those unsealed indictments, and at least one of them has been directly related to sex trafficking, child rape, pedophilia, etc. And so what I suspect is that the UK is being used in an attempt to try to drag the US into war with Iran. However, that's not going to happen. I don't believe that's going to happen, because if the British are dumb enough to get into it with Iran, I strongly suspect that Trump is going to let them get their ass kicked. And that's what's going to happen, because Iran is not the equivalent of Argentina. And so, in terms of Iran taking the bait, who knows? We don't know what their capabilities are. The fact that they had the ability to go ahead and take both of those tankers when the Brits were actively trying to protect them with their navy is a obvious demonstration of their ability to harm the British and to take them on. So, there's a lot of possibilities. Zach McCracken says maybe they will collapse Deutsche Bank now to take the attention off. There's a lot of different possibilities, but I don't believe that any of them are going to work. Because if we can figure it out, I'm pretty sure that President Trump and the good people in the U.S. military can as well. And Upchuck McDuck says Iran has like the top 5 navy in the world. I don't know where it stands in that regard, but that's not really relevant because Iran can't do anything on in what they call the blue waters, but the entire the Gulf of Oman and the Persian Gulf are all strikeable from land. There's all kinds of fancy new missiles and torpedoes and stuff. I don't know what Iran has bought from China and from Russia and what they've developed themselves, but if you're interesting to see how it shakes out. Horatius says Iran only has speedboats. No, they've also got submarines. But the thing is, that's all they need. They have no use for aircraft carriers and battleships and what we think of as a proper navy, because they're operating in the Gulf. And so, anyhow, it's Texas Dino says Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz hurts China, Japan, Europe, not the U.S. Sure, which means that the U.S. doesn't even have an excuse to go to war. And so, Kevin McCarn says, Vox, I'm familiar with UK forces. They can do some serious damage, and I don't think the UK are just going to try and park their shiny new aircraft carrier off the coast for Iran to shoot at it. The UK is not totally toothless, but they simply don't have enough forces to even begin to deal with Iran. And so, when you're talking about sunburn missiles and so forth, it's very, very easy to, and when you're able to attack from land, I mean, there's a reason why, there's a reason why the U.S. is not sending its carriers into there. They don't need to. Yeah, and also the moderators have pointed this out. If it goes offline, refresh. Stop telling us. Stop talking to other people. We don't need to know. I know. The moderators know. Everybody knows. So it's not a problem. Do you see how, it's, this is not difficult. This is not difficult. If the stream freezes, then refresh multiple times if necessary. Do not comment on it. The instant it freezes. So stop talking about it. All right. No, I mean, the thing is, I can see the minute that a frame is dropped, there it says right on top, like right now I'm looking, there's a line that says Darkstream 435, Remembering the Forgotten Veterans. That's the title of the stream, right? And it says the time, 31:58, it says the current number of viewers, which is currently 485. And then it says the bit rate, which is 1600 kbits per second, and then dropped frames. Okay, so I see the frames drop. I see the number of viewers go down when people get confused and quit out and so forth. The point is, stop talking about it. You're not informing anybody. You're just irritating us. You're just irritating everybody. And if you do even mention it, the moderators are going to put you in a timeout. And if you do it more than once, you're going to be muted from the channel and you'll never be able to chat here again. Okay? So it's not difficult. It's not hard to not talk about it. We don't need you to talk about it. We already know. Okay? Good. So anyhow, getting back to the situation in the Gulf, again, I think that this is all posturing. I think this is all an attempt by the united deep state to try to pull Iran into it. See, I totally disagree. John McClellan says, this is the start of war with Iran. Britain will pull in the USA because of NATO. Trump will have no choice. You have no idea what you're talking about. Trump knows what he's doing. He's not going. You think he's going to fall for it because of NATO? He doesn't have to do anything. I mean, do you really think that if the Turks and the Israelis get into it, that he's going to attack Israel because of NATO? Of course not. Of course not. So anyhow, Eli Rothman says, one thing I think has been a huge mistake by Iran is their coyness with nukes. They seem to have been able to arm themselves with them multiple times, but have always stopped short of it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would assume that they have them. Pakistan has them. North Korea has them. Iran is on friendly terms with both Russia and China. Why wouldn't they have acquired them? You know, why wouldn't they have acquired them quietly? You know, so who knows? I mean, the thing you always need to keep in mind is that we don't actually know what's going on, and there is no chance whatsoever that we're getting accurate reports from the news. No chance. Spearman Melton asks, yeah, DJ Testa points out, he's already called out NATO. He thinks they're overpaid mercenaries. Vox, I'm 8 days sober from marijuana. Is that actually a thing? Do you have any thoughts on 12-step? My understanding from people who have been through the 12-step program is that it's very valuable to them, and that it does work. So he says, I'm suffering from loneliness here, and I'm ready to get out there and find a community and start living. Go join a 12-step program. Why not? They're there to help you. You know, you'll meet people. You'll have the opportunity to talk to people who are going through some of the stuff that you're going through. But the main thing is, don't sit around being lonely. Most people, nearly everybody that I know that complains about being lonely is actually lazy. They just want to be able to magically make friends by sitting in their house watching TV. It doesn't work that way. You have to put yourself out. You have to go and do things. You have to communicate with people, engage in activities with people, share experiences with people. Now, you know, I don't get lonely because I have a very, very strong need for solitude. You don't write, I mean, it's fairly obvious. You don't write 900-page books because you're a social butterfly. Social butterflies don't write books. I've written, what, 16 books? Something like that. But even I need social interaction from time to time, which is why I play on my soccer team. I go to all the team dinners. I go to all the team functions. When we put on a tournament, I work at it. It's good. And that usually gives me all the social interaction I need for a month. But don't be lazy. Think about how many people need your help. Go and help people. Volunteer. Get involved. Do something. You will not be lonely. Even silence needs social interaction. Exactly. No, you're not derailing Spearman. It's fine. I just legitimately didn't. I was not aware that people could be considered. That there's any such thing as being sober from marijuana. Okay, let's see. I think there's a super chat or two I should get to. Okay. Okay. Oh, Marie Golay not only threw in the 20, but she also threw in 7. So thank you, Marie. And then she added, so gammas are armchair quarterbacks. Very much so. Absolutely. Gammas love to critique and criticize and bitch. And, that's something that I had to learn about when we got into doing comics. My instinct was to argue with people when they would say something that I thought was, nonsensical or incorrect or failing to grasp something about our comics. And then I realized that would be a mistake and that it was actually a good thing when they were critiquing our comics, because it meant they were engaged. It meant they actually cared. And so I've learned to just, let them do their thing. That's cool. Virgil Hilt says, thanks for the breakdown, Vox. Drudge had foot-high fonts about Iran. I've been praying since then. Look, I'm not saying that I'm absolutely 100% guaranteeing that there will not be war of some sort. I'm just saying that I think it's very, very unlikely that the U.S. military or Donald Trump is going to be fooled in the slightest by any of this stuff. It's all obviously an attempt to distract. Remember, the war drums have been banging, the neo-clowns have been banging the war drums about Iran since 2004. Ben Shapiro, by the way, that's the real name, Mandela effect. Ben Shapiro has been shrieking about the absolute imperative and highest national priority of attacking Iran since 2005. That's why I started calling him the littlest chicken hawk. He's running around screaming that the U.S. has to invade Iran and not signing up for the U.S. military at the same time, or the Israeli military for that matter. So this is just another, turn of the page. I wouldn't get too worried about it. I wouldn't get too excited about it. And even if there are some ships sunk or whatever, it's probably not even going to get as serious as the Falklands War was. Remember, there's lots of stuff going on in Syria, lots of stuff going on in Iraq over the past 3 years. So I think you can reasonably trust the saner people in the U.S. military and in the Trump administration to not fall for this latest neo-clown tactic. Excuse me. Legionnaire Bear says, it's payday. I don't need 12 steps for Super Chat. It's okay, Legionnaire Bear. You demonstrated your fortitude. We know you can control yourself. He says, my grandfather is a Vietnam vet. We plan on doing a video interview with him. I'll be sharing if anyone is interested. Preserve knowledge. Thanks all. That's a great idea. You absolutely should do that. Just get as much information and retain as much history and knowledge as you can. That's part of building and maintaining civilization, is learning from our elders. Let's see here. I don't think we need the rhetoric. NATO, more like Gato. Yeah, Iran doesn't have a Rothschild bank yet. That's why they need to be invaded. Let's see. Could you imagine sharing a foxhole with Ben Shapiro? Well, the good news is that you'd have lots of room, because he's, 2 Rogans tall? 2.5 Rogans tall? Wow, another Mandela effect. Check out Wikipedia. It now says that Toe Rogan's name is Joe Rogan. Wow, that's crazy stuff. I mean, what universe are we living in? So, anyhow, yes, it is a joke. I occasionally tell jokes. Oftentimes, people don't realize they're jokes, and most people don't think they're funny. So, this is why I leave the stand up to Owen. Essagram, he's a new member. Welcome, Essagram. Hi, Vox. Do you think you'll get a science channel on Unauthorized sometime in the future? Yeah, absolutely. We're planning to launch a science channel with a Christian astrophysicist who's going to talk about a lot of serious science issues. She's actually a specialist in black holes. So she's going to be getting into all kinds of crazy stuff, such as dark matter, dark energy, all kinds of stuff. And so she's extremely smart, long-time Dread Ilk, and we're probably going to launch that in the December-January timeframe. Also an economics channel, possibly at some time. I mean, the problem is that the obvious candidate for doing an economics channel would be me, and I don't have the time. The other person that I'd be interested in having do it, in fact, maybe I should talk to him about it, is Steve Keen. Steve Keen would be awesome. He'd really shake things up, because he's a great economist, but ideologically he's more of the left, but he's definitely unauthorized. I think he's more controversial in some respects and in some quarters than I am. But yeah, so I mean, the reason that I'm a little bit nervous about an economics channel is that economics too often turns into talking about finance and the stock market, and I really don't want to get into that. So, we'll have to see how it goes. But I wish my IQ was a point higher. I have my best friend. His IQ is literally 1 point higher than mine, and he qualifies for the 999 Society, and I just don't. I barely don't. So there's nothing he likes better than to say, do you need me to understand? Do you need me to explain that for you? You know, I can break it down and make it more simple, you know, for you if you need me to. So anyhow, home economics. I'd love to get home economics. I've talked to a couple. I talked to a woman about a cooking channel. We still may do that at some point in time. We'll have to see. Oh, nobody in Sweden wears clothes. You know, just ask a Swede. They just run around naked all the time. Legionnaire Bear says, research has led me to the conclusion that Sigma is a code word for Cylon. Psychosonic songs are encrypted signals to Cylon using quantum entangled relays in their electronic music in plain sight. Oh, it's worse than that. It's much worse than that. Look at who did the soundtracks for Gears of War and Frontline. Look at who did the soundtracks for Alita Battle Angel and Captain Marvel. We're everywhere. Shh. So, now that I'm nearing a Throne of Bones, every time Fox announces a new project, part of me thinks, go work on a Sea of Skulls. I would love to just sit down and work on a Sea of Skulls. I would love to ignore all of this stuff and just work on that. But you have to reinforce success and you have to win your wars. You know, I mean, one of the main reasons that I would like to get this Indiegogo situation resolved is that would free up a lot of my time to be working on a Sea of Skulls. You know, right now I'm not doing much work on it because I'm working on the Rebels Run script, you know, with the legend Chuck Dixon. And it's awesome. I mean, it's really good. If they can execute the visuals and we can keep the story straight, I think it's going to be much more successful than anybody imagines. But we'll see. Ben Cohen says, how hard is it to get a job with the Italian mafia? It's not that difficult. At least it can't be that difficult considering how many people have jobs with them. I do not have a job with the Italian mafia. I simply happen to have a few friends who don't necessarily seem to work normal jobs, which is fine, you know. It was actually kind of funny. The one time I asked a guy, I mean, keep in mind, this was somebody that I had been my workout partner for like over a year. And so we were just hanging out and I knew he was a CEO of something, but I said, so you're a CEO, right? He said, yeah. I said, okay, that's cool. I said, is it a sizable company, or is it, you know, do you have a lot of management to do, or is it like a startup? And he said, well, our annual revenues are a bit over $2 billion a year. I was like, oh, okay. You know, and the third guy that we worked out with was a professional race car driver whose best friend was one of the top F1 guys. So, you know, you just, I mean, it's very typical of normal male circles that you, especially in Europe, that you just don't talk about work. You don't necessarily talk about what you do. You know, we talked every day, but we were mostly talking about how to improve our workouts, how to improve our lifting, how to, you know, talking about personal things, kids, that kind of stuff. And, you know, if you're just genuine and honest and you treat people well, you know, you'll meet a lot of interesting people. Hobby425 says, "Hey Vox, could you perhaps draft up a constitution for the direct democracy Christian kingdom? Might be applicable in the future, or direct us to one." Well, that's one of the many projects that I would do if I had more time in the day. I would like to write up my version of republic, as it were. You know, Plato famously did his. Others have done the same. I think it would be interesting. But Monza is cool. I like Monza. What do you make of President Truman's decision to drop the atom bomb on Japan? It was absolutely wrong. Japan had been trying to surrender for 6 to 9 months. It was absolutely unconscionable and should never have been done. All the lies that they tell you about how, well, there were going to be 1 million U.S. casualties and all that stuff, total nonsense. Totally false. Why do you think American Christians would rather be polite than protected? Because most of them are cucks and churchians. Are they drunk on the red words? Are they spoiled rotten? It's the whole hard, easy times lead to weak men. Times have been exceptionally easy for Christians in the West. We are flabby. We are weak. We lack faith. We're sinful. We are unable to resist temptation. And we are reaping the rewards of that. Do Italians cry when Bocelli sings? Italians cry when just about anybody with a good voice sings. That whole thing that they do in the Godfather movies, when the Untouchables, when the Italian mobster is listening to opera and weeping, that's totally legit. Do you resent the necessity of sleep? A little bit, although I don't actually, I don't sleep all that much. I don't need that much sleep, which is fortunate because I don't have that much time for it. Let's see. Where can we find sources about the Truman Statement? I don't know about the Truman Statement, but you can find all kinds of information about we've had this discussion on my blog. Just search Nagasaki and Hiroshima. The Japanese were trying to surrender through the Soviets for 6 months. Yes, I'm married. I've been married for a long, long time. My wife is awesome. Let's see. Yep. Jono Van Pelt is correct. The Japanese demanded to keep their emperor. The U.S. demanded unconditional surrender. So the U.S. nuked them. The Japanese said, okay, we'll give up the emperor. The emperor is willing to step down to save his people. And then the U.S. allowed him to stay anyhow. So it was for absolutely nothing. What do you think Umberto Eco's essential view of history was? That's a good question. And I don't know. I think that I would say that his view was somewhat fatalistic because he wasn't a Christian. He talked about the coming Afro-European civilization because he felt that the movement from the global south was, and that's true of hope as well. When you talk to people about the future, I'm not interested in commenting on other people. I'm not going to talk about E. Michael Jones or express an opinion on anybody else. I'm not interested in internet. I've read a little bit of his stuff. I'd encourage you to, the link is underneath this stream. And if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on unauthorized, it's not. But definitely check it out. And if you're inclined, I hope you will consider supporting the filmmakers. Legionnaire Bear says, Halo is great. No, I played Halo. I dislike it. I know you don't have time. I even knew the guys who did it. I went to school with Peter Tamte. It's like missing Astra. I'm not going to play it. I have no interest in Halo whatsoever. And those controllers on the original Xbox were horrible. Was General Patton neutralized in your opinion? Probably. Why do you put so much faith in Christianity? Because it's true. All nations that have adopted it are withered and decayed. You're a moron. I mean, that's ridiculous. South Korea is not withered and decayed. Christianity is growing rapidly in China. I mean, Korea is now 1/3 Christian. You don't understand how it works. The reason that the nations are withering and decaying is because they abandoned Christianity. They're post-Christian and they're dying. You know what the solution is for them to find their national vigor and to restore hope and confidence? They need to return to Christianity. You know, don't even try to get started with your pagan LARPy bullshit. You know, somebody said, I think all nations should go back to their original historic ethnic religions. That's what, you know, the Aztecs you know about, the Druids were awful. All of those, I mean, almost all pagan religions saying, you know, teaching anything but Jesus Christ, anything but the gospel, anything but the truth. And so that's the answer for the nations. All right, well, we could go on for a long time. No doubt we're going to go on. No doubt we're going to hit that subject soon. I lived in South Korea a couple of years. There's backwards swastikas all over the place because it's a religious symbol. Yes, that's exactly right. So, anyhow, have a good evening. Subscribe to unauthorized.tv. Check out Unforgettable. And we will look forward to seeing you the next time. This is the Darkstream. I'm Vox Day.